北京举行为期4天的中共第20届四中全会已于10月23日下午落幕。这场原本属于党内治理的例会，在后疫情时代与美中对抗升温的背景下，其意义早已超越中国内部议程。外界普遍视这场会议为北京对世界发出的政策信号场。
In Beijing, power gathers behind the red flag. It's plenum week when Chinese leaders chart the nation's next chapter. This one will define the 5-year plan, taking China to 2030. It's been nearly half a century since China began its transformation, a process party officials often trace back to December 1978, when economic reforms first opened the door to global trade and private enterprise. From rigid state-controlled planning to rapid industrialization, China quickly became the workshop of the world. Western manufacturing jobs flowed east, and the momentum surged again when it joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. Today, Beijing dominates renewable energy, electric vehicles, and rare earth metals needed to power them.
It is the fourth time the committee has convened for a so-called plenum since it began its most recent term in 2022.
The talks come at an uncertain time for the world's second-largest economy that is beset by sluggish domestic spending, a protracted crisis in property sector, and a turbulent trade war with the US.
The world's second-largest economy is charting a course through global uncertainty, from sluggish growth at home to an escalating trade confrontation with the United States.
China is strongly dissatisfied with a series of US actions. We hope the US side will respect the outcomes of trade consultations and correct its erroneous practices.
Well, this is a meeting that takes place behind closed doors. Those attendees are locked away to prevent leaks, and they'll be planning the next 5-year plan that will be officially rubber-stamped by the National People's Congress next year, when we'll get a full look at what that plan is. But we do know from Chinese state media the Chinese President Xi Jinping has addressed the plenum this week. He said that he was outlining a plan for high-quality economic growth. We expect that's in areas like AI, green energy, electric vehicles, and other high-end manufacturing. Now, Xi will be wanting to boost domestic demand, which has been weak in China, and that's been leading to slower growth. Obviously, this all comes as the US and China trade war continues, with China facing the potential of more tariffs and more actions from the US, and Xi set to meet Trump in just a few days. So state media have really been painting Xi and this plan as, as Xi as a master planner of China's long-term rise, showing that he's different, a contrast to the US and Trump with playing short-term politics.
Well, the communique is full of this language that we're used to, again, from the Communist Party in China, and we also had it when in Moscow when they would issue their communiques. It's full of unswerving dedication to various targets. The center point of it is the 5-year plan, and this is something that is basically it's an outline of where they see the economy developing. One of the targets they say is that they want to achieve a moderately prosperous society in 10 years' time, which means growing at 10% a year, and that's something which the economy clearly isn't doing. So it's more about setting out targets and creating a tone. I mean, ultimately, this is a political organization, not an economic meeting.
在外界期待中国释放更多开放与合作讯号之际，本次四中全会公报呈现的，则是一份带有战略思维的政策蓝图。根据新华社10月23日发布的公报，北京设定到2035年要在经济实力、科技实力、国防能力、综合国力与国际影响力5个面向显著提升，并以自力更生应对挑战作为主要基调。金融时报与日经亚洲等媒体分析，这反映出中国正在从过去强调全面布局的战略，调整为更具选择性、聚焦核心领域的影响力经济阶段。事实上，从2022年到2025年的四中全会脉络可以观察到，北京持续在寻找主导国际原则的角色定位，而本届会议则是进一步明确了路线。若以时间轴来看，2019年是美国对中国依赖的危机觉醒，那么2022年则是中国重新定义自身国际影响力的转折点。 在历经超过2000天的美中贸易战，北京在战略上采取更为务实的调整，不再强调宏大愿景，而是运用具体外交杠杆，包括锁定关键产业、重塑地缘伙伴关系，以及在科技与能源供应链上强化主动权。这样的战略也被外界形容是理性收缩、聚焦杠杆的调整方向。接下来，在10月30日南韩庆州登场的亚太经合组织元首峰会，外界高度关注这场被视为6年来美中最高层接触的可能会晤是否真能登场，预料将是检验这一路线的重要起点。
Professor, everybody knows that you are a renowned expert on China issues and have researched and observed China's politics, economy, and public policies. The 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party is not only a major event in China, but has also attracted global attention. In the National Congress, there are usually no discussion, but rather making announcements on important conclusions. And based on your observation, what issues may cause concerns for the U.S. and the whole world?
Yes, likewise, it's great to see you again. I think what we're going to see, I mean, it's already obvious that Xi Jinping is going to cement his position as the supreme leader in China. And that does have policy consequences, which means that I think we're going to be seeing continuity rather than any significant change, which I think means, for example, for outsiders looking in, the continuation of the COVID policy, which of course has disrupted supply chains and has made China's global integration more problematic. But I think also what we will see is an emphasis on what he talks about as being the new global order and the need for China to strengthen its security. So what does that mean in practical terms for the world outside? I think it means, first of all, that China will continue to pursue, as far as is possible, agreements with those other countries that do not accept a Western-dominated global order. The obvious example being Putin in Russia, but also Iran and a number of other countries scattered across the globe. I think secondly, it means that China will continue its push to be what Xi Jinping says is a rule maker.
China is on a path to self-reliance amid an escalating trade war with the United States. That's just one of the messages to come out of the ruling Communist Party's plenum this week, shaping the nation's social, political and economic course for the next 5 years.
As you said, the next 5 years we will see China is moving more on development in balancing with security. So industrial power is definitely a core. So in Xi Jinping's world, that is integration of science, technology, innovation, plus industrial innovation.
Is China positioned in the right way to be able to pursue that aim of becoming a techno-industrial superpower?
From the limited documents released now, we see the very broad direction is to build a platform-oriented, or you say ecosystem-oriented innovation model, rather than just using government subsidies to boost innovation. So that means more enterprise-level R&D will be encouraged, and competition will be in higher quality rather than just cutthroat competition. And regions will cooperate together. So the implication is also for resource allocation across the country, across all different regions and across different industries. The details will come out next year.
Earlier this month, Beijing announced a new round of export controls on rare earth minerals, vital inputs for a range of high-value industries, including advanced electronics and military systems, adding intensified uncertainty for global manufacturers. Not just in the U.S., but Europe as well.
What does the choice of weapons in this trade war, soybeans and rare earths, tell us about each side's priorities and perceived vulnerabilities?
So one of the interesting things here is, I think, from the perspective of the United States and more generally Europe and the high-income West, the vulnerability of only sourcing rare earths from China is a very, very risky thing for now and into the long term. So in the very short term, China's threat to not sell them to the rest of the world was quite a serious threat. But I think what's going to be happening now, China will allow the flow to come back into the United States and other countries, but more deeply, playing in the background is this separate concern of the West that they need to be building out supply chains for these same items to other places. So to some extent, Xi Jinping politically, to his domestic constituency, has stood up to the United States and said, we are very important and you need us. And now Donald Trump has said, okay, I'm going to go meet with you and negotiate with you. You can remove this barrier, and this will give you some more domestic credibility. The Chinese people will think you look like a great leader for standing up to us, and it will look in some ways like we've kind of conceded to some demands of China. So there's a political win here for President Xi. At the same time, this soybean thing, I mean, it's been floating around. President Trump has been raising since 2019. China agreed in 2019 to buy many more soybeans from the United States. They never did. They never hit any of the quotas and promised purchases. Then they said this, last year they were going to put more restrictions on soybeans. So it's not, in some sense, a very economically substantive agreement they're making. But President Trump can now go back to his constituency and say, the Chinese have now conceded. They are going to buy American soybeans, which is what we always wanted. So in some ways, there's a little bit of political gamesmanship around this whole thing, where they've been fighting this trade war for some time, but we're really back to where we started in the first place, the same kinds of trade in soybeans and rare earths that we would have had all along.
The China-US relationship is an extremely complicated one. Trump is extremely erratic, and it's a highly imbalanced. If really America, the world's greatest power ever, is arguing soybeans versus rare earth minerals, then that's clearly a ridiculous position to be in. So there's a huge number of issues here that are not going to be solved this weekend. Clearly, ratcheting down of tensions is important, but we are not coming to any grand bargain this weekend at all.
Who would you say is the stronger cards in these negotiations?
I think it's very difficult to say. I think I wouldn't say both sides have cards. Neither side has a silver bullet. And America does have a lot of power. I think often China a lot of people think China holds the upper cards because of the rare earths sort of stranglehold they have. But remember, China is hugely dependent on trade, hugely dependent on America. And so in that sense, China cannot afford to shoot itself in the foot at all.
川普深知在美中对抗的赛局里，与其正面应战，不如透过盟友与制度进行间接制衡。 他锁定晶片与绿能等战略产业，用市场、投资与法规3层杠杆，让盟友国不敢太轻重，又离不开美国以围堵中国的发展。当外界以为中国会持续走强硬与封闭的老路时，北京的对外策略却出现了微妙转向。一场从全面进攻到理性收缩的调整，正悄悄改写中国的外交方程式。面对这场可能在南韩登场的美中最高层接触，双方的语言不再谈对抗，而是在计算杠杆。北京选择集中资源，聚焦可控；华府则以盟友为轴，布局横跨亚欧的制度链。在无法决胜的博弈里，美中都在拖，也都在算。10月30日之后，或许不会改变两强对抗的战略现实，但它将揭示一个新时代的起点。当理性收缩遇上间接制衡，世界正进入一场没有硝烟却改写秩序的权力重构。